In the structure of the brain now. Parts of the brain we have to complete. Take out your books. Structure of the neuron, nerve impulse conduction, what is synapse, all these things were already completed. What did you study about this? Synapse, what was synapse we had studied? Synapse was what? What was synapse? Point of contact between, all of you take out your books fast. Point of contact between the axon, terminal of one neuron and the dendrites of the other. The type of chemical substances. What was the type of chemical substances? Category of chemical substances. What are they? Category of chemical substances at the synapse. What are those chemical substances known as? Neurotransmitters. One example of neurotransmitter, acetylcholine. All these we had studied the other day. The entire concept of nerve impulse transmission we had studied. Difference between axon, dendrites we had studied. One difference between, tell me one difference, structural difference between axon and dendrites.
Now they are short.
And dendrites are short. Axon is long. Number wise, axon and dendrites difference as per their number. Axon only one, dendrites numerous. Function, axon and dendrites. Axon receive, dendrites receive stimulus.
Axon conducts
Impulses. The basic concept of stimulus and impulse also to remember. Then next is the structure of the brain. I think the last class we were doing division of the nervous system, right? The word nerves and neurons. What was the basic difference I told you? Nerves and neurons. What difference is nerves and neurons? What is the difference between nerves and neurons? Who will tell me? Difference between nerve and neuron. What is the basic difference between nerve and neuron? What is it? Neuron. What is the definition of neuron? Neuron is not a bundle. What is the definition of neuron? Functional unit of nervous system. Then what is the definition of nerve? A bundle of neuron. Hundreds of neurons together, always to remember. Bundle of neurons will always be a nerve. Division of nervous system, that is what we were discussing the other day. Division of nervous system. Did I give you a short flow chart on that? Division of nervous system, check. What are the two major subdivisions of the nervous system? Central nervous system and peripheral. And I must have given you the basic definition of peripheral nervous system because that is only a short portion that you are supposed to study. Only a short concept you are studying there. What is the definition of peripheral nervous system?
network of nerves connecting the sinus to
Sinus. Central nervous system. Central nervous system short में कैसे लिखते हैं? CNS. So correct करो उसको. I mean read that way, write that way. So what is it? Peripheral nervous system. So today we are going to study the central nervous system, the major part. So peripheral nervous system, what are you to understand? It is a network of neurons connecting the brain and the spinal cord to the rest of the body. So how many neurons does the peripheral nervous system contain? Hundreds and hundreds. A network of neurons that is connecting parts of the body to the brain and the spinal cord. That is what is known as peripheral nervous system. But now that we talk about the peripheral nervous system, that means I am talking about hundreds of neurons, but those hundreds of neurons again can be divided into two major groups. What are those two major groups? Peripheral nervous system, also known as in short form, that can be also written as PNS. So now that I talk about the peripheral nervous system, what are the subdivisions? The subdivisions are, number one is the somatic nervous system. This is a basic concept only for you to remember. What is the somatic nervous system doing? It is regulating all the voluntary actions of our body. This was the last concept that we were discussing the other day. Somatic nervous system. When I say somatic nervous system, matlab, you are supposed to understand that this group or this part of the nervous system contains about hundreds of neurons, and all these neurons are controlling one type of a function. What? Controlling the voluntary actions of the body. You're already aware about the concept of voluntary actions. Now that we are talking, writing, walking, blinking, smiling, laughing, all these are voluntary actions. So these actions are controlled by neurons of this group, of this category. What is the contrast? The contrast is the involuntary action. So somatic nervous system. What is the other set of nerves? We are talking about as the autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system. So now that I talk about the autonomic nervous system would generally consist of the other set of neurons. Autonomic nervous system. The other set of neurons, and what is their function? Controlling all the involuntary actions. Thinking of some involuntary actions. What are some? Breathing, heartbeat, the process of digestion, peristalsis, all these are involuntary actions. So, for the concept of peripheral nervous system, only this much you are supposed to understand. The two major groups of the neurons. The next part is the central nervous system. The next part is the central nervous system. Let us start with this. The central nervous system majorly comprises what? The brain and the spinal cord. I think the other day we already started with this, the brain. What are the protective structures of the brain? We start with this. Since we are learning about the brain, the first thing that we have to remember is the protective structures. What are the protective structures of the brain? Number one. The first one would be what? The skull. What is the skull also known as? The cranium or the brain box. What is the nature of the skull? If I have to understand, where is the skull? Outside. On the outer covering of the brain. What is brain made up of? A mass of neurons. The neurons are extensively coiled and compactly arranged. These neurons compactly arranged. But this particular region of our body is protected by a number of structures. The bony structure that we are talking about is the skull. So the first thing that I start with is, what are the protective structures? What are the protective structures of the brain? Protective structure, number one is skull, and the membranous structure is what we talk about as meninges. What are the membranous structure? The moment I say membrane, you have to understand that it is made up of epithelial tissues, 3 consecutive layers, one on top of the other. So something like, if I talk about the brain here, if I now talk about the brain here, this entire arrangement of the neurons would be something like this. The entire arrangement of the neurons, something like this. But we are now trying to understand the cranium and the meninges. How are the cranium and the meninges arranged? The cranium and the meninges. If this is what I am drawing as the meninges, followed by the outer covering that is known as the cranium. So just get an idea. The cranium would be the hard, bony cover, the skull. And this layers that I'm talking about, 3 layers, and in between them, there is a fluid. So this entire layer that I talk about, what is this layer known as? This is known as the meninges. What do they contain? They contain a fluid, and this is something to do with some nutritive function, some providing protection. So what is this fluid known as? This fluid is known as the cerebrospinal fluid. So we are talking about the protective structures of the brain, the first thing. What I said, what are the protective structures known as? Hard outer bony cover. Name the bony cover. You get a question. What to write? Cranium or the scalp. Name the membranous cover. This membranous cover is nothing but made up of epithelial tissues or epithelial cells. You already studied epithelial tissues. Now, meninges, between the meninges, what is there? Between the meninges, there is a fluid. Between the meninges, what is present? The cerebrospinal fluid. What is the function of the cerebrospinal fluid? All of you will write these points down. What are the functions? Functions of the cerebrospinal fluid. Number one, provides protection. Provides protection to the brain. Provides protection to the brain. Acts as a cushion. It acts as a cushion and protects from jerks and mechanical injury. Mechanical injury. So the first thing, you can change this point as nourishment. Provides nourishment to the brain. So these 2 points only you should know. So now that we are talking about what is cerebrospinal fluid, where is it present? Cerebrospinal fluid is present between the meninges, a watery fluid. This watery fluid can provide nourishment to the brain, and at the same time it acts as a cushion. It acts as a protective layer, does not allow the brain cells to get easily damaged. Whenever we are extremely sad or we are extremely happy, we are excited about anything, at that time what happens? The impulse transmission is very sharp, very rapid. At that time also the brain cells are not easily damaged because this cerebrospinal fluid helps in maintaining the entire process of nerve impulse conduction. So this is about the protective structure. Now we try understanding what are the other features of the brain. I said just now, brain is a mass of neurons, extensively compact, extensively coiled. Does the brain also require oxygen? Yes, the brain cells also require oxygen. What are the parts? The parts of the brain to study. What are the major parts of the brain? To talk about the parts of the brain, as per your syllabus, majorly the fore and the hindbrain you are to study. Let us start with this. The parts of the brain, the forebrain. Which part is known as the forebrain? Forebrain is this entire region that you can see, the blue and the green and this purple region. The entire region is the forebrain. Major part of the brain is the forebrain. So when we are talking about the forebrain, what are the parts? Forebrain is the largest region, but again it has got some subdivisions. Only 2 subdivisions you are to study as per your portion there. So let us start. The first portion is known as, the first part is known as the cerebrum. The first part known as cerebrum. What are some features of the cerebrum? What are some functions? We'll start understanding. Cerebrum, this entire region, from where to where cerebrum, it is the largest portion of the forebrain. Yes. So cerebrum that we are talking about is the largest part of the brain, or say the forebrain. The entire brain also we consider. Largest part of the brain. From where to where? from the middle of the forehead, from here till this part, it's all the cerebrum. The entire region is the cerebrum. So now that we are talking about the cerebrum, right from here, from the forehead, here's this entire region, this entire part is the forebrain. If you look into the figure, you can see that the entire arrangement of the neurons, are they all in the form of a sheet? No, they are not in the form of a sheet. They are in the form of some folds and curves. No? The entire bundle of neurons are extensively folded. So the features of the cerebrum, they have extensive folds. They have extensive folds, or they are extensively folded. The entire region of the cerebrum, it is nothing but a bundle of neurons that we are talking about. But this bundle of neurons are extensively folded. They have got folds and curves. And this is entirely divided into two halves. The entire cerebrum is divided into two halves. The entire cerebrum that we understand is actually divided into two halves. Exactly how we draw the partition line actually. It is almost at this region where the cerebrum is divided into two halves. There's a right half, there's a left half. There's a right half of the cerebrum regulating the functions of our left body. And there's a left half of the cerebrum which is regulating the functions of our right body. And between the right and the left, there are cords of neurons connecting the right and the left, transmitting messages from the right to the left and vice versa. So what are the halves of the cerebrum known as? I just now mentioned that the cerebrum, the entire the folded arrangement of the neurons, it is in two halves, the right and the left. What are these halves known as? The halves are known as the cerebral hemispheres. What are the halves known as? The halves are known as cerebral hemispheres. Halves of cerebrum. What are the halves of cerebrum known as? Cerebral hemispheres. Okay. Then, when we are talking about the structure, talking about the cerebrum, I just now mentioned that it is the largest region. It has got extensive folds. The folds are actually responsible for certain function, we will understand. And the halves are known as the cerebral hemispheres. What are their functions? Some specific functions we are supposed to understand. What are their functions? Functions, the first one is they control, the cerebrum control all the different type of voluntary functions. Voluntary functions earlier also we have talked about. Cerebrum is the major region of the brain which controls the voluntary actions. That is number one. What about the second? Controls all the sensory perceptions. Controls all sensory perceptions. Controls all sensory perceptions. That is vision, hearing, taste, smell, etc. It is the cerebrum which controls all these functions. This is what you will have to write as sensory perceptions. What is the meaning of sensory perceptions? How we are able to see and how we are able to talk and how we are able to hear is all because of the cerebrum major. Apart from this also, the cerebrum has one more function. What is that function? The cerebrum performs or plays a very important role in our behavioral functions such as memory, intelligence, analysis, thinking, etc. So now that we are talking about this folding pattern, is the folding pattern the same for all of us? No, the folding pattern is not the same for all of us. The folding pattern little bit differs, and that is the reason why we all differ in this behavioral aspects. So you get questions. Name the seat of memory. That's a very common question in your papers. Name the seat of memory. What is the seat of memory? The cerebrum. Seat of memory meaning region of the brain which is controlling memory, which is controlling analysis, which is controlling all the reasoning, ability, intelligence, etc. So remember, the more the packing unit, the more the folds, more extensive the folding, more sharper would a person be in the entire concept of reasoning and memory and intelligence. So we are of the same species, we mammals, we human of the same species. So talking about, we all would be having this packing unit in a scale. The persons, the people who will generally have a packing unit at a higher scale, extensive packing and very good in all these behavioral aspects. So what about the cerebrum? You have to remember the basic function and the structural aspect. Look into the next one. Another part, how many of you have your textbook right now? NCRT? So diagram nikalo and tell you with the diagram whatever parts I am speaking about. Cerebrum देखो, cerebrum है diagram में. No textbook. Take out the volume in the diagram in the volume. The volume in the diagram is a bit darker. It's a bit dark, but never mind. You can take that diagram also. Cerebrum, is it there in your diagram? Those of you have the textbook, mark the cerebrum. The marking of the diagram also will be there and questions on that. Is the cerebrum there? Mark the cerebrum in your figure there. Now the next part, we are still talking about the forebrain. What is the next part of the forebrain? The next part of the forebrain is hypothalamus. The next part of the forebrain is hypothalamus. Is the hypothalamus there in the figure? Underline. Is the hypothalamus there in the diagram? Underline. The labeling of the diagram also you have to know. Labeling of the diagram also you will have to know. Hypothalamus. So now when we are talking about the hypothalamus, this particular region is the hypothalamus. Check in your diagram also. This entire region is the cerebrum. This particular region is the hypothalamus. Okay. So mark the hypothalamus in that diagram. So now what is hypothalamus meant for? Hypothalamus is a part of the forebrain, remember. And this hypothalamus has got some important functions. What is the major function? It regulates body temperature. It regulates body temperature, and that's the reason the hypothalamus is also known as the body's thermostat. So, ये function enough है. What is the function of hypothalamus? Number one, regulates body temperature. How does it regulate the body temperature? Whenever the surrounding temperature is low, what do we do? Whenever the surrounding temperature is lower, we are in an environment when the surrounding temperature is 18 degrees, 16 degrees or lesser, what happens to our body? What is the adaptation we try showing? What happens to us? Whenever we are in an environment where the outside temperature is very low, what is the change that happens in our body? What happens? We feel cold. So apart from when we are feeling cold, when the temperature surrounding us is very low, what is that characteristic? Shivering. So now this is the major concept to understand, that when the surrounding temperature falls, when the surrounding of our body is having a very low temperature, our body temperature is 37. But whenever we are visiting a place very cold, or whenever we are in the AC room very cold, now the temperature 18 degrees, what's happening? We start feeling cold. After a particular period of time, we start shivering. So now when we are feeling cold and shivering, are the body functions inside happening all regularly? No, for a short time, the body functions also a little bit alters, changes. So, but then, though the body function little bit only changes, even when the temperature outside is 18, our body temperature is still the 37 or 36.5, nothing less than that. I talk about people in the cold countries in the month of December, what happens? Their body temperature drops or remains 37?
Drops.
No, remains the same. People in cold places, talk about the people in our country, northern part of our country, Delhi, etc. In the month of December, January, temperature falls to almost about 8 degrees, 6 degrees. So their body temperature also becomes 8 degrees, 6 degrees or 37. 37. We experience extreme heat in the summer, in the month of May. People in certain countries, they experience temperature 50 degrees. Does their body temperature increase to 50 or remains 37? Remains 37. So what is that change that happens in our body when surrounding temperature is very high? What happens? What happens? When surrounding temperature, whenever you are in an environment, surrounding is very hot, what happens? What is that change that happens in our body immediately? Sweating. We start sweating profusely. So we are shivering to maintain the body heat. There are many more. I'm just talking about the main two. We are shivering when the outside temperature is very low because of the signals provided by the hypothalamus. Outside temperature high and we start sweating because of the signals provided by the neurons of the hypothalamus. So when we are sweating, the body is already losing heat by the way of sweat. Body is losing heat. Outside temperature 50, our body temperature will be 37. Outside temperature 8 degrees, we are shivering. Muscular contraction is maintaining that heat, not allowing body temperature to fall to even 20 also, 30 also. Okay. So that is in brief to understand what is the concept that we are writing here. Hypothalamus regulates body temperature how? By increasing the blood supply, by bringing about sweating in summer, and decreasing the blood supply, bringing about muscle contraction, shivering in the winter. So in the extreme winter, what happens? Muscle contraction so much, the chattering of the jaw and everything starts happening. No, all these are processes to maintain the body heat temperature. So that is the first one. Second function of hypothalamus that you have to remember. Second function of hypothalamus. What is it? Regulates the rhythms such as sleep and wakefulness. Sleep and wakefulness, hunger and thirst. Are you able to understand when you are hungry, when you have to eat? Definitely, no? Are you able to understand when you are feeling thirsty, you have to drink something? Right? This is also, now whenever we are thirsty, when the water level in our body little bit starts dropping, and we are actually feeling very thirsty, what happens? Our mouth starts getting dried out. That is also a signal provided by the hypothalamic neurons that it is time to drink water. Hunger, yes, we all can understand hunger. When the food in the stomach has already got digested and moved out from the stomach and it's already now another 1 hour, digestive juices are there, no food to be digested in the stomach, hypothalamus will send signals and we start feeling, there's a sensation that yes, we are feeling hungry and it is time to eat something. So we all are aware about that, no? A sense of hunger, a sense of thirst. That is because of the hypothalamus. Hypothalamus gives signals to the stomach, to the mouth, etc. Sleep and wakefulness. That is actually also known as the biological rhythms of our body, the biological clock. Every day you must be getting up because of the alarm. No, the alarm that you set in your clock or your mobile, etc. Now the alarm at maybe at 5:30, 6 o'clock for all of you. But did you ever try without the alarm? Are you getting up at a particular time? Maybe on a Saturday, Sunday, you did not put the alarm. Maybe by 6 o'clock you did not get up, but by 9 o'clock you are naturally getting up. Why? Once the body has taken in adequate amount of oxygen, once the body has taken in adequate amount of rest means muscle rest, we understand, the body will, as it is, get alert and awake again. So, though we all are used to that alarm in the phone and the clock, but even when we are not using that, do we keep on sleeping continuously? No. After a particular period of time, we are awake. And when there's a massive deficiency of oxygen in our body, muscles are extensively exhausted, we feel tired. No? We feel like sleeping, we doze off. Sleep and wakefulness, all these are functions of hypothalamus. Okay? So what are the two parts of the forebrain we studied? Cerebrum. What is its role? You have to remember. These three functions as it is you get for 2-mark questions in your paper. 2 mark, write down the three functions, two functions of cerebrum. That's a very common question. Function of cerebrum. Let us talk about the next part now. So we were talking about cerebrum. The forebrain, two major parts. Midbrain, not a major portion in your syllabus, but let me just mention this. Midbrain. When we are talking about the midbrain, which are the major parts? The midbrain has got certain lobes. The midbrain has got certain lobes of neurons. Lobes, matlab, the midbrain has got parts, but that's not mentioned in your syllabus. You don't have, but just to mention, because we have included that in the volume. Midbrain, the middle region. So the midbrain is all these parts. And this particular region has got various different sections of neurons known as lobes. Lobes matlab ek chota aggregation jaise. Chote clumps of neurons, aggregations of neurons. So, what are those neurons for? If I talk about the optic lobes, what would the optic lobes do? Optic lobes would help in vision. What would the next be? Olfactory lobes. What would the olfactory lobes help in? Sense of smell. I talk about the auditory lobes. What would the auditory lobes help in? Hearing. So something like this. Ek do agar, if you read, that is more than enough for you. Now, the major part that you again have in your syllabus is the third part of the brain, and that is known as the hindbrain. What are the parts of the hindbrain? Now, let us again go through. What are the parts of the hindbrain? Now, this is a very important section, the forebrain that I talked about and the hindbrain that I am talking about, important sections. The hindbrain, what are the parts? The first part is cerebellum. Look for cerebellum in your diagram. Got that? Cerebellum. So, which is the cerebellum? The cerebellum is this particular region. Did you see? This leaf-shaped structure. No, a leaf-shaped folded structure that is called the cerebellum. Marking sab aana chahiye. What is this particular region? Cerebrum. What is this particular region? Hypothalamus. And now I am talking about the cerebellum. The cerebellum, talking about the characteristics of the cerebellum also consists of folded arrangement of neurons. This also have folded arrangement of neurons in the shape of a leaf. Folded arrangement of neurons in the shape of a leaf. Does it have halves? Yes, it also has got halves. The two halves. 1, 2. Check the diagram. Are you able to understand the halves of the cerebellum?
Yes.
Yes or no? The halves of the cerebellum. But if it is cerebrum, cerebral hemispheres. If it is cerebellum, then it is known as cerebellar hemispheres. Cerebrum का क्या लिखा था हमने? Cerebral. और cerebellum का क्या लिखेंगे? Cerebellar hemispheres. Take a note of this word. हाँ, cerebellar hemispheres. So we are talking about the halves of the cerebellum, cerebellar hemispheres. What are the functions now? Functions of the cerebellum. The major function of cerebellum is maintain body balance. One major function of cerebellum is maintain body balance, meaning समीर. अब समीर का एग्जाम्पल ले लो. समीर का जो cerebellum है, it is not working that very good. क्यों? क्योंकि cerebellum helps in body balance. Body balance, if the cerebellum is proper, then we are able to stand straight, we are able to sit straight, we are able to hold our body. So whenever we talk about cerebellum, cerebellum helps in maintaining body posture, helps in maintaining body balance. Can you tell me what is the difference between the body posture of a normal individual and an alcoholic individual? Have we difference? Are we able to understand a person who is alcoholic or under some intoxication? A person who is even on strong dosage of medicine, simply alcohol or strong dosage of medicine से भी a person's coordination orientation may change. So whenever we talk about a person, now that we are able to hold our body, when you are running also you are able to hold your body. Whenever you are swimming also, cycling also, you are able to hold your body because the cerebellum is functioning properly. What about an alcoholic? What about a person on strong doses of some chemicals? The cerebellar neurons are numb. The medicine, the chemical effects on the neurons of the cerebellum, and that's the reason the person is not able to maintain the body balance. The person will slide, the person will slip, the person will get disoriented anytime. So if the person is getting disoriented because of the dosage of any type of a chemical, medicine, drugs, alcohol, which part of the brain gets affected? Cerebellum. And that's a common question you will see in your paper also. An alcoholic person walks clumsily. Give reason. An alcoholic person walks clumsily. Give reason. What to write? The strong doses of alcohol affects the cerebellum, and that's the reason his body balance is absolutely disturbed. ये common question है. We will answer these questions later. Next is muscle coordination. Muscular coordination. Now, muscular coordination means are we able to coordinate 2-3 parts of our body at the same time? Are we able to do that? Now that you are writing something, are you able to flip the pages of the book? Yes. Now that you are talking, are you able to draw and write something? Yes. When you are cycling, both the legs and the hands, you are maintaining the brakes also. When a person is driving the car, the hands and the feet muscles both working at the same time. So I think for quite a number of activities all throughout the day, 2-3 parts of our body always work together. This is what we understand as muscular coordination. So it is not that when I talk I cannot write. When I'm using my right hand, left hand is absolutely blocked. Is it like that for our body? No. 2-3 parts of our body can work together. Muscular coordination. Which part of the brain is responsible for this? Cerebellum. We talk about the next one. The next region of the hindbrain. Which is the next part of the hindbrain? The next part of the hindbrain is the pons varolii. Check this part. Can you see this part in the figure? The pons varolii. Which one? This particular region. Underline all these names that I am talking. All these names that I am pronouncing. And we are talking about all these 5 parts of the brain. Very, very important for you. Pons Veroli, now that we are talking about Pons Veroli, this is just the Pons Veroli that we are talking about is actually between, when we look into the brain, Pons Veroli actually also is present just opposite to the cerebellum. Pons Veroli, what is its location? Present just opposite to the cerebellum. Does it have any halves? No, it does not have any halves. It is a lobed arrangement of neurons. It is a lobed arrangement of neurons. What about its function? Pons Veroli, what is its function? The function of the Pons Veroli is, major function is, it regulates the rate of breathing. Pons Veroli regulates the rate of breathing. Regulating the rate of breathing. Does our breathing rate, now you have already studied respiration and we have already discussed quite a lot. फैन एसी सब बंद, इस बैच के लिए खर्चा बहुत कम है हमारा. हाँ क्या बोला इसने?
कुछ नहीं बोला.
You don't need any AC. चाहिए ना?
नहीं.
किसने बोला नहीं?
चाहिए.
तो फैन तो चलाओ. बुखार आया तो 27 में चलता है. Without the AC, without the fan, they will just sit like this. Okay, now. क्या बोल रहा है? क्या बोल रहा है?
अरे वो लिखा समझ में आया तो लिखा
नहीं बोलेगा कुछ भी अभी. Okay, the Pons Veroli, now that we are talking about, regulates the rate of breathing. Now tell me, the rate of breathing, what is the rate of, what is the number of breaths that we take per minute? We have studied in respiration. 16,000.
60.
How many times do we breathe per minute? What did we learn in that respiration concept?
60.
Huh?
60.
60? No, 16. 16 to 18 times per minute. ठीक है? तो ये अगर normal breath है, normal rate of breathing है, I am writing function of Pons Veroli is regulating the rate of breathing. मतलब as per the need of the body, sometimes the rate of breathing is high, sometimes the rate of breathing is low. When would the rate of breathing be high? When we are running, when we are tensed, when we are anxious about something. So whenever we are stressed or tensed or vigorous muscular activity, running, walking, playing some sport, etc., the rate of breathing is increased. So वो 16-18 times से possible है, 40-45 times भी हो सकता है. But the moment we take rest, after half an hour, 1 hour, we take rest, again the rate of breathing. Or maybe now you are playing and you are extremely exhausted, in 5-10 minutes you take a rest, the rate of breathing comes back to normal. Again it can shoot up. When would the rate of breathing be very low? When a person is suffering from an infection, disease, injury, accident, surgery. So in all these cases, the rate of, so as per the body, the rate of breathing would go high, would come down. Which part of the brain regulates? Pons Veroli, the third part of the hindbrain. The third part of the hindbrain. Can you see the medulla oblongata there? The third part is the medulla oblongata. That's the last region of the hindbrain, medulla oblongata. So medulla oblongata is the start of the spinal cord. It is the start of the spinal cord. It is also known as the brain stem. The medulla oblongata, which part? This part is known as the medulla. The medulla oblongata is the first part of the spinal cord, meaning after this it is going to continue as a spinal cord in the vertebral column. So this part, the medulla, also known as the brain stem, function क्या है? Function is controls all the involuntary actions. Controls all the involuntary functions of the body. Now, involuntary functions already you know. Involuntary functions are what? Involuntary functions are digestion, peristalsis, heartbeat, the rate of breathing. Just now we are talking about the breathing. So all these. Now, when we are talking about the central nervous system, what did we talk about? Central nervous system is comprised of the brain and the spinal cord. So, which are some of the major regions of the brain that we have been talking about? The major regions of the brain are the cerebrum. Actually, for your portion, for your exam, which are the parts very important? Cerebrum, you should know. What happened? Medulla oblongata. OBLON.
ANDER.
O, GATA. कौन सा TER का कोई?
अरे वो oblongata.
OBLONGATA. Now, let us talk about the spinal cord, the next part of the central nervous system. Now, the diagram for the spinal cord is not there, but just a fair idea you should have. So here, if I talk about here the brain ends up. Okay, here the brain ends up. So what was the last portion of the hind brain? What was the last portion of neck? Don't look. You don't have to look into all these. What is the last portion of the hind brain? Just now I explained you. What is that?
Medulla.
Medulla. The last portion of the spinal cord is the medulla. Okay, see there. From the brain we continue. Just now we were talking about the brain. Central nervous system. Name the two subdivisions of the central nervous system. What to write? Brain and spinal cord. So I talk about the brain and the entire spinal cord. Together, this is the central nervous system. But now, just now we were talking about the parts of the brain. Now let us talk about last part of the brain was medulla. And from the medulla, now the entire rod of neurons. From the medulla, the entire rod of neurons. What is this rod of neurons? Now known as spinal cord. What is surrounding the spinal cord? See here into this figure. See here and try telling me. This entire yellow line that you see, what is this yellow line? The spinal cord. What is spinal cord made up of? Bundle of neurons coming from the brain. Hundreds of neurons coming from the brain, all bundling up, running from the base of the head till our upper hip region, the entire region. This is known as the spinal cord. But these are delicate neurons. They have to be protected by a bony casing. What is that bony casing of the spinal cord? What is this? Vertebral column. This is known as the vertebral column. Okay. Now, just try to look into this figure and try to understand. Now that we talk about the spinal cord, just this basic idea. How can we divide the entire spinal cord? Based on the regions of the body. From where to where does the spinal cord run? From the base of the head. From the base of the head till our upper hip. What is this upper hip region known as? Or the hip region, the sacral region. Okay. Now here, the entire spinal cord can be divided into 5 regions based on which portions of the body it belongs to or which part of the body it belongs to. Let us start with the first one. The spinal cord, which is here at this region. What is this spinal cord? In the neck region known as cervical. In the chest region known as thoracic. The number of the bones, no need, only the entire subdivisions of the spinal cord. The spinal cord in the neck region known as cervical. Spinal cord in the chest region known as thoracic. The spinal cord in the upper hip region known as the lumbar. Then we talk about the lower hip, that is the sacral. And then last is the tailbone region, that is the coccyx. So this is the entire spinal cord. What is the function of the spinal cord? That is what you are asked.
Spinal cord is Surrounded by meninges.
Spinal cord also has meninges as the membranous cover, and the bony cover is the vertebral column. Okay, the brain and the spinal cord, I'll give you some differences. Now the function. What about the function of the spinal cord? The reflexes that we understand. What are reflexes? Reflexes are any type of a sudden response. Can you give me an example of a reflex? When we were learning the concept of nerve impulse conduction, that time also synapses and all, that time also I gave you some idea about the concept of reflexes. The moment we talk about spinal cord, the basic subdivisions no need, but then the functions you have to remember. What is the most important function? How will you define the spinal cord? How can spinal cord be defined? It is the bundle of neurons running from where to where? From the base of the head till the hip region. So the spinal cord is nothing but the bundle of neurons from the base of the head, to the hip region. What is its function? We talk about the function of the spinal cord. The function of the spinal cord, the most important function of the spinal cord is to regulate and control reflexes. To regulate and control reflexes. Now, what are reflexes? That's the next part that we have to understand. But before that, let us write down some differences between the brain and the spinal cord. Make a table very fast. This function only you will have to remember. What is the function? Major function of the spinal cord is this. Write one specific function of the spinal cord. Regulates and controls the reflexes. The definition and the component of reflex is the next topic. Before that, let us take some differences between brain and spinal cord. Make a table. At least two differences you should know. Brain and spinal cord. Write fast. For brain, write down. Compact arrangement of neurons. Protected by the cranium. Compact arrangement of neurons protected by the cranium. Other side, for spinal cord. Rod-like arrangement of neurons. Protected by the vertebral column. Number 2. Protected by vertebral column. Protected by vertebral column. Number 2. For brain, controls voluntary actions. Sensory perceptions, etc. The three functions that we wrote earlier. Controls voluntary actions, sensory perceptions, etc. For spinal cord, controls reflexes and sensory and motor impulses. Controls reflexes and sensory and motor impulses. Impulses spelling you know.
Reflexes.
Controls reflexes and
Sensory.
motor impulses to and from the brain. Okay, now let me tell you the second function that we have written. And from the brain. To and from the brain. Okay, so what did you write? Are you clear about the functions of the brain that you have written? Clear hai? You have written about the voluntary actions and you have written about what? The sensory perception. So these things separately we had discussed. Now for the spinal cord, the most important function that the spinal cord regulates in our body are the reflexes. Apart from the reflex, what is the other function that the spinal cord regulates? Every time sending messages to the brain, sensory impulse that you have written. And carrying messages from the brain, that is called motor impulse. Clear? So what is the last part that you wrote? Regulates sensory and motor impulses to and from the brain. Yes or no? Sensory impulse. We'll now talk about a concept of reflex action, then it is very clear. Sensory impulse मतलब जो messages spinal cord से brain तक जाता है उसे हम बोलेंगे sensory impulse. And the motor impulse means messages which are brought from the brain to the spinal cord. Brain and spinal cord are parts of CNS. They are always coordinating with each other. Question लिख के रखो. The next class we are going to start with. Define reflex. Define reflex. Define reflex. What are, full stop, next part. What are the components of reflex action? What are the components of reflex action? So the next class we have to start with reflexes. What are reflexes?